The bitter Wyoming wind howled through the canyon pass, carrying with it the promise of an early winter. Samuel McKenna, known to the few souls in these parts simply as Sam, stood on the porch of his sprawling ranch house, watching storm clouds gather over the distant mountains. To anyone passing by, though few ever did, he appeared to be nothing more than a solitary cowboy, weathered by sun and wind, making his living off the unforgiving land. None would guess that the man in worn leather chaps and dusty boots was heir to one of the largest mining fortunes east of the Mississippi. None knew that he'd fled that world of crystal chandeliers and suffocating expectations 3 years ago, burying his identity along with the memories of his younger brother's tragic end. Inside the house, he picked up the letter again, his sister Margaret's elegant script dancing across the page. She'd written from Denver, her words carrying that particular blend of concern and meddling that only siblings could manage. "Dearest Samuel," it read, "I've taken the liberty of extending an invitation to a Miss Clara Hartwell. She's recently relocated to Cheyenne from Boston, and I believe you two might find common ground. She arrives Tuesday by stage. Please, brother, give this a chance. You cannot hide forever in that wilderness." Sam crumpled the letter with a grunt of frustration. Margaret knew he'd never turn away a woman traveling alone to his remote ranch, especially with winter approaching. She'd trapped him neatly. As always, Tuesday arrived with a dust devil racing across the plains. Sam waited at the stage stop in Willow Creek, the nearest excuse for a town, population 37 on a good day. He'd considered sending his ranch hand, Jose, but Margaret would hear of it and there'd be hell to pay. The stage rolled in 2 hours late, wheels creaking and horses lathered with sweat. The driver, old Ben Morrison, gave Sam a knowing grin as he climbed down to help with the passengers. "Got a lady for you, Sam," Ben wheezed through his tobacco-stained beard. "Came all the way from Cheyenne. Pretty thing, but looks like she's seen some troubles." Sam's first glimpse of Clara Hartwell nearly stopped his heart. She emerged from the stagecoach with careful grace, one gloved hand accepting Ben's assistance. She wasn't beautiful in the painted, artificial way of the society women he'd known back east. Her beauty was quieter, like morning light on still water, touched with an unmistakable sadness that shadowed her gray eyes. Her traveling dress, though well-made, showed signs of careful mending. Her auburn hair, pulled back in a simple chignon, had loosened during the journey, leaving wisps to frame her face. When she looked up and met his eyes, Sam saw something he recognized, the guarded wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust too easily. "Miss Hartwell," he touched the brim of his hat. "I'm Sam. Margaret asked me to meet you." Clara studied him for a long moment, and he found himself oddly nervous under her scrutiny. "Mr. McKenna, your sister spoke highly of you." Her voice carried a slight tremor, whether from the cold or uncertainty. He couldn't tell. "Just Sam," he said, reaching for her traveling case. His fingers brushed hers accidentally, and he felt the calluses there, working hands, not the soft hands of a pampered Eastern lady. "Ranch is about an hour's ride. Hope you don't mind a wagon. I've grown accustomed to much worse. Mr. Sam." A fleeting smile touched her lips but didn't reach her eyes. The ride to the ranch passed mostly in silence, broken only by the creak of wagon wheels and the occasional cry of a hawk overhead. Clara sat rigid beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes fixed on the endless expanse of grassland and sage. "First time in Wyoming territory?" Sam ventured. "Yes, it's vast." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "Different from Boston." "That it is." He wanted to ask what had brought her west, what shadows lingered in those gray eyes, but he recognized the walls she'd built. He had enough of his own. As they crested the final ridge, the ranch spread out below them, the main house, the barn, the corrals, all nestled in a valley protected by rising bluffs. Clara drew in a sharp breath. "It's larger than I expected," she said softly. Sam shifted uncomfortably. The ranch was indeed substantial, too substantial for a simple cowboy. "I've been lucky," he said simply. That evening, After settling Clara into the guest room and sharing a quiet supper of beef stew and cornbread, they sat by the great stone fireplace. The room was simply furnished but well made, the kind of understated quality that whispered rather than shouted wealth. "Your sister," Clara began carefully. "She didn't mention what you do here. Cattle, mostly, some horses." Sam poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. "Nothing fancy, just honest work." Clara nodded, but he caught the speculative look in her eyes. She wasn't fooled entirely, but she didn't press. Perhaps she had her own reasons for accepting half-truths. "And you?" he asked. "What brings a Boston lady to Cheyenne?" The shutters came down behind her eyes. A change of scenery was necessary. Her fingers unconsciously went to her throat, where he noticed for the first time a thin scar just visible above her collar. They lapsed into silence again, but it was less awkward now, more like two wounded creatures recognizing their shared wariness. "Your sister suggested a 2-week visit," Clara said eventually, "to see if we suit. But I should tell you, Sam, I'm not looking for what she probably hopes. I've had my fill of expectations." Sam felt an unexpected relief. "Margaret means well, but she doesn't understand. I'm not looking for anything either, Miss Hartwell, but you're welcome to stay the 2 weeks. Gets lonely out here, and winter's coming fast. Be good to have company that doesn't moo or neigh." That earned him the first genuine smile he'd seen from her, transforming her face entirely. For a moment, the shadows lifted, and he glimpsed the woman she might have been before whatever had driven her west. "Then we understand each other," Clara said. "And please, if I'm to stay, call me Clara." Over the next days, they settled into a careful routine. Clara insisted on earning her keep, despite his protests. She took over the kitchen from Jose's grateful hands, proving herself more than capable with a simple ranch fare. She mended clothes with neat, efficient stitches, helped with the vegetable garden behind the house, even learned to gather eggs from the hen house without getting pecked. Sam watched her work with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. This was no pampered Eastern lady playing at frontier life. Her hands knew labor, her back didn't complain at bending, and she faced each task with quiet determination. One evening, he found her on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains purple and gold. The wind had loosened her hair again, and she'd given up trying to tame it, letting it flow freely around her shoulders. "It's beautiful here," she said without turning. "Harsh, but beautiful. It suits some folks," Sam replied, settling into the chair beside her. "Others it breaks. And which are you?" Still figuring that out, she turned to look at him then, really look at him, and he felt exposed under that steady gray gaze. "I think you know exactly which you are. Sam McKenna. You just don't want others to know it too." Before he could respond, she rose and went inside, leaving him alone with the dying light and the uncomfortable feeling that Clara Hartwell saw more than he'd intended to show. The first snow came early that year, dusting the valley like flour from a sifter. Clara stood at the kitchen window, hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, watching Sam work with the horses in the corral. He moved with an easy grace that spoke of years in the saddle, his voice low and steady as he gentled a particularly skittish mare. "You keep staring at him like that, señorita. He might notice," Jose said with a grin, entering the kitchen with an armload of firewood. Clara felt heat rise to her cheeks, but didn't look away. "I'm merely observing the horse training. Jose." "See, of course." The old vaquero's eyes twinkled with mirth. The horse training. Over the past week, she'd found herself drawn to these moments of watching Sam work. There was something honest about him, something real that had been lacking in the men of Boston society. He never pretended to be more or less than he appeared, a man making his living from the land, finding peace in simple labor. "Would you like to learn?" Sam's voice startled her. He stood in the doorway, hat in hand, a questioning look in his dark eyes. "Learn what?" "To ride, properly, I mean, Western style. Not that side saddle nonsense they teach back east." Clara hesitated. Since arriving at the ranch, she'd kept busy with household tasks, maintaining a safe distance despite their growing ease with each other. But the prospect of learning something new, something that might help her survive in this harsh land, appealed to her practical nature. "I'd need different clothes," she said finally. Sam's smile was worth her capitulation. "Margaret left some things that might fit. Said she had a feeling you'd need them." An hour later, Clara emerged from her room wearing a split riding skirt and sturdy boots, feeling both liberated and exposed. Sam had already saddled a gentle bay mare named Buttercup, who stood placidly in the crisp morning air. "First rule," Sam said, moving to stand beside the horse, "is respect. A horse knows if you're afraid, angry, or false. They're honest creatures, and they expect the same from you." His hands guided hers to the saddle horn, showing her the proper grip. Clara tried to ignore the warmth of his touch, the way her heart stuttered when he stood close enough that she could smell leather and sage on his clothes. "Now, left foot in the stirrup, that's it, and swing yourself up. Don't be delicate about it. Buttercup sturdy enough?" It took 3 tries before Clara managed to mount properly. But Sam's patient encouragement never wavered. Once she was settled in the saddle, the world looked different. Larger, perhaps, but also more manageable. "How does it feel?" Sam asked, adjusting her stirrups. "Like freedom," Clara said without thinking, then bit her lip at the admission. But Sam only nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's exactly what it is." They spent the morning in the corral, Sam teaching her the basics of Western riding, how to hold the reins in one hand, how to shift her weight to guide the horse, how to read Buttercup's movements and respond accordingly. By noon, Clara was sore in places she'd forgotten existed, but exhilarated. "You're a natural," Sam said as he helped her dismount. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary, and their eyes met. Something passed between them, electric and undeniable, before they both stepped back. "Hungry?" Clara asked, her voice slightly breathless. "I've got stew warming." "Always hungry after working horses?" Sam replied, but she noticed he seemed as unsettled as she felt. That afternoon, the snow began in earnest. Fat white flakes drifted past the windows as Clara worked on mending one of Sam's shirts. He sat across from her, cleaning tack. The comfortable silence between them filled with the pop of the fire and the whisper of snow against glass. "You never asked," Clara said suddenly, surprising herself. Sam looked up from the bridle he was oiling. "Asked what?" "About my past, about why I'm really here. Most men would have pressed for answers by now." He was quiet for a long moment. "Considering, figured you'd tell me when you're ready, or not, your choice." Clara set down her sewing, studying this unusual man who offered acceptance without conditions. "I was engaged," she said quietly, "to a very respectable gentleman in Boston." "A doctor?" Sam's hand stilled, but he didn't speak. "I worked as a nurse during the war. After, I continued at the colored hospital in the city." The words came slowly, like water through a dam beginning to crack. "Charles, my fiancé, didn't know. When he found out, he was displeased. Said no wife of his would associate with such people. We argued." Her hand went unconsciously to her throat, to the scar Sam had noticed that first night. "He didn't mean to hurt me," Clara continued, her voice steady despite the memory. "But his family ring caught my throat when he grabbed my shoulders. The scandal was considerable. A broken engagement. Questions about my virtue, my judgment. I lost my position at the hospital. Lost everything. Really." She looked up to find Sam watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Anger, perhaps, but not at her. So Margaret's letter seemed like providence. Clara finished. "A chance to disappear, to start over where no one knew my shame." "Shame?" Sam's voice was rough. "Clara, the only shame in that story belongs to him?" Tears she'd been holding back for months threatened to spill over. "You don't understand. In Boston society—" "Boston society can go hang itself," Sam said firmly. "You helped people who needed help. You stood by your principles. That's not shameful, that's honorable. Clara looked away, unable to bear the fierce protectiveness in his eyes. You're very different from most men I've known. Sam McKenna. Maybe that's because I'm not the man most people think I am either, he said quietly. They returned to their tasks, but something had shifted between them. The walls they'd both built were beginning to show cracks, letting in slivers of light. The next days brought more snow and deeper cold. Sam taught Clara to shoot his Winchester, her determination to master the rifle both amusing and impressing him. She learned to read the weather signs, to identify tracks in the snow, to understand the rhythms of ranch life. One evening, a wolf pack's howling echoed across the valley, close enough to send shivers down Clara's spine. Sam found her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the darkness with wide eyes. They won't come near the house, he assured her, settling beside her on the bench. Too many human smells, too much activity. They sound so wild, Clara said. So free. They are. Last of the truly wild things out here. Maybe. Clara pulled the blanket tighter. Do you ever feel trapped, Sam? Even out here with all this space? He considered the question, aware of her shoulder touching his, the way her hair smelled faintly of the lavender soap she'd brought from back east. Used to, he admitted. When I first came here, I was running from something. Thought the space would make it better. But you can't outrun what's inside you. What changed? Learned to make peace with it, I suppose. Learned that being alone and being lonely aren't the same thing. Clara turned to look at him, her face pale in the moonlight. And which are you now? The honest answer would have been that he'd been content in his solitude until she arrived, that her presence had awakened something in him he'd thought buried with his old life, that the thought of her leaving in another week made his chest tight with an emotion he didn't want to name. Instead, he said, ask me when your 2 weeks are up. 3 nights later, the blizzard hit. It came howling out of the north like a living thing, turning the world white and wild. Sam barely made it back from checking the stock, ice crusting his beard and eyebrows. Going to be a bad one, he said, stamping snow from his boots. Could be trapped inside for days. Clara looked up from the book she'd been reading, one of his. She'd been delighted to discover he had a small library. Do we have enough supplies? Plenty of food and firewood. Jose made it to his cabin before the worst hit. It's just us and the storm. Just us. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with possibility and danger. Alone together for who knew how long, with the walls they'd built already weakening. That first night of the storm, they sat close to the fire, sharing stories of their childhoods. Sam found himself telling her about growing up in Philadelphia, careful to paint it as middle-class comfort rather than extreme wealth. Clara spoke of her father, a school teacher who'd inspired her love of learning and her desire to help others. He would have liked you, she said softly. He always said the measure of a man wasn't in his possessions but in his actions. Sam felt the weight of his deception pressing against his chest. Several times he almost told her the truth about the fortune he'd inherited, about his brother's death, about why he'd really fled to Wyoming. But each time, the words stuck in his throat. How could he explain without sounding like another man who'd deceived her? On the second night, with the storm still raging, Clara made coffee and brought it to where Sam stood at the window, watching the white fury outside. Thank you, he said, their fingers brushing as he took the cup. For the coffee, for everything, for being here, for making this place feel less like exile and more like home. Clara's breath caught. The firelight danced across his features, and she thought she'd never seen anyone so genuinely beautiful. Not handsome in the polished way of Eastern gentlemen, but beautiful in his honesty, his strength, his quiet kindness. Sam, she whispered, and he turned to face her fully. The space between them disappeared. His hand came up to cup her cheek, thumb tracing the line of her jaw with infinite gentleness. Clara's eyes fluttered closed, and she leaned into his touch, starved for tenderness after so long. When his lips finally met hers, it was like coming home after a long journey. The kiss was gentle at first, almost questioning. But when Clara's arms wound around his neck, Sam deepened it, pouring all the loneliness and longing of the past years into the connection between them. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads touching. "Clara," Sam said roughly. Please," she interrupted. "Don't apologize. Don't ruin this with words." He kissed her again instead, and this time there was nothing gentle about it. This was need and want, and the recognition of two souls finding their match in the unlikely vastness of Wyoming territory. When they finally separated, Clara was trembling, not from fear or cold, but from the intensity of what she felt, emotions she'd thought Charles had killed in her, now blazing back to life. "I should go to bed," she said unsteadily, though every part of her wanted to stay in the circle of his arms. Sam nodded, though his eyes remained dark with desire. "Clara, when the storm passes—" "I know," she said softly. "My 2 weeks will be up soon." They stood there in the firelight, neither willing to voice what they both feared, that when the snow cleared, reality would intrude once more, and decisions would have to be made about futures neither was ready to imagine alone. The storm passed after 3 days, leaving the world transformed under a pristine blanket of white. Clara stood at the window, watching Sam and Jose dig paths between the buildings, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Everything had changed during those snowbound days, yet nothing had been spoken aloud. They'd maintained careful distances, but the awareness between them crackled like static electricity. It was while tidying Sam's study that Clara found the photograph. She'd knocked over a stack of books, reaching for a high shelf, and the image had fluttered out from between pages like an escaped secret. The photograph showed a younger Sam standing before an imposing Philadelphia mansion, dressed in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 other men in equally fine attire. One bore enough resemblance to be his brother. Clara stared at the photograph, her mind racing. This was no middle-class childhood home. This was wealth, serious, undeniable wealth, the kind of mansion she'd visited as a nurse, treating the privileged class who could afford private care. She heard Sam's footsteps in the hall and quickly slipped the photograph back into the book, but her hands trembled as she reshelved it. Why had he lied? What was he hiding? Over the next days, Clara found herself noticing things she'd overlooked before. The way Sam's hands, though calloused from work, moved with an educated grace when he wrote in his ledgers. His extensive vocabulary when he forgot to guard his speech. The quality of the books in his study, first editions, many of them, worth more than a cowhand could earn in years. The piano in the parlor that he played when he thought she was asleep. Complex classical pieces that spoke of years of expensive lessons. The final confirmation came unexpectedly. A group of men arrived from town, seeking to lease grazing rights on what they called the McKenna holdings. Clara was bringing coffee to the parlor when she heard their conversation through the door. "Mr. McKenna, sir," one said, his tone respectful, almost obsequious. "We know you own near about 20,000 acres hereabouts. We're only asking for the use of the southern pastures." "The land's not for lease, Hartley," Sam replied, his voice carrying an authority she'd never heard before. "But, sir, with your resources, surely you don't need—" "I said no. That's final." Clara's hands shook as she set down the coffee tray and fled to the kitchen. 20,000 acres, Mr. McKenna, sir." The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Sam wasn't some fortunate cowboy who'd done well. He was landed gentry, playing at being common folk, just like Charles. He'd lied to her, made her believe he was something he wasn't. The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds she'd thought were beginning to heal. When the men left, Sam found her in the kitchen garden, yanking out dead plants with unnecessary force despite the cold. "Clara, you missed lunch." She didn't turn around. "I wasn't hungry. Is something wrong?" He reached for her shoulder, but she jerked away. "Don't touch me." Sam stepped back, concern creasing his features. "Clara, what's happened?" She whirled to face him, eyes bright with unshed tears. "Mr. McKenna, sir," she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Tell me, how many acres exactly do you own? How many cattle? How much is your fortune worth? The color drained from Sam's face. Clara, I can explain. Can you? Can you explain why you lied to me? Made me believe you were just a simple rancher? Her voice rose. Months of suppressed anger and hurt pouring out. Was it amusing, watching the poor nurse from Boston work in your kitchen? Mend your clothes, thinking she was earning her keep? It wasn't like that, Sam said desperately. I never meant… What? To deceive me? To make me trust you? Clara laughed bitterly. Congratulations, Mr. McKenna. You succeeded admirably. She pushed past him, but he caught her arm. Clara, please, let me explain. She wrenched free. I've heard enough explanations from lying men to last a lifetime. Clara fled to her room, slamming the door behind her. She paced like a caged animal, fury and hurt warring in her chest. How could she have been so foolish? How could she have let herself believe, even for a moment, that she'd found something real? As darkness fell, she made her decision. She would leave at first light, storm or no storm. She'd rather take her chances with the elements than spend another night under the roof of a man who'd deceived her. She packed by candlelight, folding her few possessions with mechanical precision. The split riding skirt Sam had given her, lent her. Everything here was borrowed. She left on the bed. She wanted nothing from him. Clara slipped out of her room near midnight, intent on saddling Buttercup herself. The barn was dark and cold, her breath visible in the moonlight streaming through the cracks. She'd watched Sam enough times to know the basics, but her hands fumbled with the unfamiliar buckles and straps. Going somewhere? She gasped, spinning around. Sam stood in the doorway, a lantern in his hand casting shadows across his face. I'm leaving, she said, lifting her chin. You can't stop me. In the middle of the night, in this cold? He stepped closer, and she could see the desperation in his eyes. Clara, you'll freeze to death before you make it 5 miles. That's my concern, not yours. Damn it, woman! The curse exploded from him. You think I care so little for you that I'd let you ride off to your death? I don't know what to think, Clara shouted back. I don't know who you are. Sam set down the lantern and ran his hands through his hair. You want the truth? Fine. My name is Samuel McKenna III. My father owned McKenna Mining Enterprises. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited everything, the money, the businesses, the expectations. His voice grew quieter, rougher. I also inherited the responsibility for my younger brother Thomas. He was fragile, sensitive. The pressure of being a McKenna broke him. He took his own life 3 years ago, left a note saying he couldn't bear to disappoint the family name anymore. Clara's anger faltered at the raw pain in his voice. I left Philadelphia the day after his funeral. Sam continued. Sold my shares to the board, took my inheritance in cash and land, and disappeared. I've been here ever since, trying to figure out how to live with the guilt. That doesn't explain why you lied to me, Clara said, though her voice had lost its edge. Doesn't it? Sam stepped closer, and she could see the anguish written across his features. You showed up here, running from a man who'd hurt you because of his prejudices, his need to maintain appearances. How could I tell you I was everything you were trying to escape? You could have trusted me. Like you trusted me? He shot back. We've both been hiding. Clara, the only difference is my secret had a bigger bank account attached. They stood facing each other in the cold barn, 2 wounded souls caught between truth and fear. I'm sorry, Sam said finally. You're right, I should have told you, but these past weeks, they've been the first real moments I've had in 3 years. You saw me as just Sam, not the McKenna fortune or the family tragedy. I didn't want to lose that. Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks, the cold making them sting. I can't go through this again. Sam, I can't be with someone who hides himself from me. I'm not hiding anymore, he said quietly. Ask me anything. I'll tell you everything about the money, the family, the guilt that wakes me up at night, all of it. It doesn't matter now. Clara turned back to Buttercup, fumbling with the saddle. My 2 weeks are up anyway. Sam moved swiftly, covering her hands with his. Then stay longer. Stay until you know everything about me. Stay until you can decide if who I really am is worth knowing." "Why?" Clara whispered. "Why does it matter?" "Because I love you." The words hung crystalline in the cold air. "I've loved you since you stood in my kitchen that first morning, determined to earn your keep. I've loved you through every sunrise coffee, every evening by the fire, every moment you've made this empty house feel like home." Clara's resolve crumbled. She turned in his arms, seeing the truth written plainly across his face. "Sam?" "I know I've no right to ask," he said, cupping her face gently. "But please, give me a chance to make this right. The storm's coming back. Jose says so. Stay until it passes. After that, if you still want to leave, I'll drive you to town myself." Clara searched his eyes, looking for any sign of deception. All she found was love, fear, and desperate hope. "No more lies?" she asked. "No more lies," he promised. "No more hiding, just truth, whatever it costs." Clara nodded slowly. "Until the storm passes." Sam pulled her into his arms, holding her as if she might disappear. In the cold barn, with the wind beginning to pick up outside, Clara let herself be held. The future remained uncertain, trust still fragile as new ice. But for now, in this moment, it was enough. The morning brought the promised storm, fiercer than the last. Sam built up the fires while Clara made breakfast, both moving carefully around each other, testing the fragile peace between them. Over coffee, Sam began to tell his story properly. No evasions, no half-truths. "My father built his fortune in copper and silver," he said, staring into his cup. "Started with nothing, ended with millions. He believed in hard work, but somewhere along the way, he began to believe that money was the only measure of a man's worth." Clara listened without interrupting as he spoke of growing up in that Philadelphia mansion, of the weight of expectations that pressed down on him and Thomas from childhood. Thomas was meant to be an artist. Sam continued, his voice soft with memory. Had a gift for painting, but father wouldn't hear of it. McKenna men were businessmen, not dreamers. He looked up at Clara. "The day I found him, he'd been painting a landscape of the place we'd vacationed as boys, before father got rich, before everything changed." Clara reached across the table, covering his hand with hers. "I'm sorry, Sam, so deeply sorry. I should have stood up to father, should have protected Thomas better." The guilt was raw in his voice. "Instead, I played the dutiful son, learned the business, pretended the money mattered. You can't blame yourself for your father's failings," Clara said gently, "or for Thomas's choice." Sam turned his hand palm up, interlacing their fingers. "I've told myself that 1,000 times. Out here, with the work and the silence, I almost began to believe it. Then you came, and suddenly I wanted to be more than my guilt again." They sat in companionable silence as the storm raged outside. Finally, Clara spoke. "I should tell you the whole truth, too, about Charles, about why I really came west." Sam squeezed her hand. "You don't owe me." "Yes, I do. If we're being honest, then I need you to know everything." Clara told him then about her work during the war, how she'd held dying boys' hands regardless of the color of their skin, how after the war, she'd continued at the Freedmen's Hospital despite society's disapproval. "Charles courted me for 2 years," she said. "He seemed different from other men, progressive. He spoke of medicine as a calling to help all people. I thought we shared the same values." Her voice grew bitter. "Then one of his colleagues saw me leaving the hospital. Charles was waiting when I got home that evening. He'd been drinking, said I'd humiliated him, that no decent woman would debase herself that way." Sam's jaw tightened, but he remained silent. "When I refused to apologize, refused to promise I'd stop, he—" Clara touched her throat. "He grabbed me, shook me. His ring caught my skin. There was so much blood." She laughed humorlessly. "Ironic, isn't it? A doctor causing the wound I couldn't properly treat myself." "What happened then?" Sam asked quietly. "Charles panicked, sent for his own physician, who stitched me up and agreed to stay quiet for a price. But servants talk. Within a week, all of Boston knew something had happened. Charles spread the story that I'd been hysterical, that I'd attacked him. His family's influence ensured everyone believed it. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I lost everything. My position, my reputation, my friends. Even the people I'd helped at the Freedmen's Hospital couldn't risk associating with me. That's when Margaret's letter came. Sam stood and rounded the table, pulling Clara to her feet and into his arms. She went willingly, burying her face against his chest as years of held-back tears finally broke free. "You're the strongest woman I've ever known," he murmured into her hair. "And Charles Worthington was a damn fool." Clara pulled back slightly. "I never told you his last name." Sam looked sheepish. Margaret's letter was thorough. I had Jose burn it after I read it. Didn't seem right to keep your secrets written down. Despite everything, Clara found herself smiling. "What else did Margaret tell you? That you needed somewhere safe to heal. That you had a good heart that had been badly used. That if I hurt you, she'd personally come to Wyoming to shoot me. She said that. Margaret doesn't make idle threats." Sam cupped Clara's face gently. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I was a coward. We were both afraid," Clara corrected. "But no more, agreed? No more fear between us." Instead of answering with words, Sam lowered his head and kissed her. This time, there was no hesitation, no careful distance. Clara melted against him, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair as years of loneliness and longing poured into their connection. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Sam rested his forehead against hers. "Clara, I need you to know, the money doesn't matter to me. It never has. If you want, I'll give it all away tomorrow. We could live simply, just the ranch, just us." Clara pulled back to look at him. "That's not necessary. Sam, I don't care about your money. I care that you hid it. Wealth itself isn't evil. It's what people do with it, how they let it change them. It won't change us. Has it changed you these 3 years? Have you become cruel or careless?" Sam considered. "No, if anything, I've learned its true worth, which is only what good it can do." "Then we'll use it to do good," Clara said simply. "Together, if you'll have me." Sam's answer was to kiss her again, deeper this time, with all the promise of a future neither had dared imagine. When Jose knocked to announce lunch, they were still standing entwined in the kitchen, mapping each other's faces with gentle touches. That evening, as the storm continued its assault on the windows, they sat before the fire in the parlor. Sam had pulled out a bottle of good whiskey, and they sipped it slowly, trading stories of their pasts, the real ones this time. Nothing held back. "Play for me," Clara requested, gesturing to the piano. "I've heard you at night sometimes. You're quite accomplished." Sam looked embarrassed. Mother insisted on lessons. It was the one gentle thing Father allowed because it was considered proper for society. He moved to the piano bench, running his fingers over the keys before beginning a soft, melancholic piece. Clara recognized it as Chopin, one of the nocturnes. She moved to sit beside him, watching his hands move with practiced grace across the keys. "Thomas loved this one," Sam said quietly. "Said it sounded like starlight." "It does," Clara agreed. "Like stars reflecting on still water." When the piece ended, Sam turned to her. "Do you play?" "A little. My father taught me simple hymns." She placed her hands on the keys, picking out a familiar melody. This was his favorite. Sam recognized Amazing Grace and began to add harmony to her simple melody. They played together, their hands occasionally brushing, the music weaving around them like a spell. As the last notes faded, Clara found herself overwhelmed by the intimacy of the moment, here in this warm room, with the storm raging outside and this complex, wounded, wonderful man beside her. She felt something she'd thought lost forever. Hope. "Clara," Sam said softly, taking her hands in his. "I know we've only known each other a short time, But I can't imagine going back to the emptiness before you came. These walls have heard nothing but silence for 3 years. And now they hear music," Clara finished, "and laughter, and truth." "Stay with me," Sam said urgently. "Not just until the storm passes, not just for another week. Stay forever. Marry me, Clara. Let me spend the rest of my life proving that your trust isn't misplaced." Clara's breath caught. "Sam, we've only just—" I know it's too soon, too fast, but I also know that I love you, that you've brought light back into my darkness, that when I think of tomorrow and all the tomorrows after, I can't see them without you." Clara studied his face, seeing the naked vulnerability there. This man who'd hidden behind walls for so long was offering her everything, holding nothing back. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, Sam, yes." He crushed her to him, and Clara felt his tears against her neck. They held each other as the storm raged on. Two souls who'd found harbor in the wilderness of Wyoming and each other. Later, as the night grew deep and the fire burned low, Sam led Clara to his room. They stood at the threshold, both understanding the significance of this moment. "Are you sure?" he asked, ever the gentleman despite the desire darkening his eyes. Clara answered by stepping into the room and drawing him after her. What followed was a communion of souls as much as bodies, a gentle exploration that held all the reverence of sacred vows. They loved with the desperate gratitude of those who'd thought themselves beyond redemption, finding grace in each other's arms. Afterward, they lay entwined beneath the heavy quilts, listening to the storm's fury outside their warm cocoon. "I love you," Clara said into the darkness. "I thought I'd forgotten how to say those words and mean them." Sam pressed a kiss to her temple. "I love you too, more than I have words for." They slept then, deeply and peacefully, while outside the Wyoming winter raged on, unable to touch the warmth they'd kindled between them. Spring came slowly to Wyoming that year, the snow reluctant to release its grip on the land. Clara had settled into ranch life with a contentment she'd never known, her days filled with purpose and her nights with love. She and Sam had spoken of a summer wedding, something simple with just Jose and a few neighbors as witnesses. The trouble started with smoke on the horizon. Sam spotted it first, a black smudge against the clear morning sky. He'd been teaching Clara to rope cattle when he straightened in the saddle, his face hardening. "Jose," he called sharply, "ride to the north pasture and check the herd. That smoke's coming from our property." Clara felt ice in her veins as they rode hard toward the smoke. They found the line shack burned to the ground, still smoldering. And worse, 5 head of cattle shot and left to rot. "Who would do this?" Clara asked, fighting nausea at the senseless waste. Sam's expression was grim as he dismounted to examine the scene. "I have a suspicion." That evening, Clara was bandaging a burn on Sam's hand. He'd tried to salvage what he could from the shack when riders approached. 3 men, well-dressed despite the rough country, their horses too fine for common cowboys. "Evening, McKenna," the lead rider called, not bothering to dismount. Clara recognized the type immediately. Eastern money wrapped in Western clothing, playing at being frontiermen. "Garrett," Sam acknowledged coldly. "You're not welcome here." Harrison Garrett smiled, but it didn't reach his pale eyes. "Now, that's no way to greet an old partner. Aren't you going to introduce me to your companion?" Clara felt Sam tense beside her. "My fiancé is none of your concern. State your business and leave." "Fiancé?" Garrett's eyebrows rose. "How delightful. And here I thought you'd sworn off all attachments after poor Thomas." Sam was moving before Clara could blink, hauling Garrett from his saddle. The other men reached for their guns, but Jose appeared with his rifle trained on them. "You don't speak his name," Sam growled, his fist cocked back. Garrett laughed, even with Sam's hand twisted in his shirt front. "Still so sensitive. Very well. Let's discuss business instead. I want to buy your land. McKenna. All of it." "Not for sale." Sam released him with a shove. Garrett straightened his clothes with elaborate care. "Everything's for sale at the right price. Besides, you can't possibly need 20,000 acres for your little experiment in playing rancher. The answer is no." "I tried to be civilized," Garrett said, mounting his horse. "Remember that." His gaze shifted to Clara, and she suppressed a shudder at the calculating coldness there. "Ma'am, I look forward to our better acquaintance." After they left, Sam paced the parlor like a caged wolf. "Harrison Garrett," he explained to Clara's questioning look. "We were partners once, back in Philadelphia. I caught him embezzling from the company, cooking the books. When I confronted him privately, offering him the chance to leave quietly, he tried to blackmail me with manufactured evidence about Thomas." "What kind of evidence?" Clara asked gently. Sam's laugh was bitter. "Thomas was different. As I said, gentle. Garrett had letters, supposedly suggesting improper friendships. All lies. But in Philadelphia society, even the suggestion, I bought his shares, forced him out, but he's been following my investments ever since, trying to horn in on every deal. And now he's here. The railroad's coming through next year. This land will triple in value. Garrett must have gotten wind of it." Clara moved to him, taking his hands. "We'll fight him together." Sam pulled her close. "I won't let him hurt you." "Clara, I should send you away until—" "Don't you dare," Clara interrupted fiercely. "We're partners now, Samuel McKenna, for better or worse. Remember?" The next weeks brought a campaign of harassment. Fences cut, water sources fouled, stock scattered. Sam hired extra hands, but Garrett's money ran deep, and some men could be bought. The worst came on a moonless night. Clara woke to the smell of smoke and Sam shaking her roughly. "Fire, the barn!" They ran outside to find the barn fully engulfed, orange flames licking at the sky. The horses screamed in terror, and without thought, Clara plunged toward the burning building. "Clara, no!" But she was already throwing open stall doors, dodging panicked hooves and falling timbers. Sam joined her, and together they managed to free most of the horses, though Sam took a kick to the ribs that sent him sprawling. Clara dragged him clear as Jose and the hands formed a bucket brigade. It was hopeless. The barn was gone, but they saved the other buildings. As dawn broke over the smoking ruins, Clara tended Sam's injuries. His ribs were bruised but not broken, though each breath pained him. She'd singed her hair and had numerous small burns on her arms, but they were both alive. "That was foolish," Sam said, wincing as she wrapped his ribs. "Yes, it was," Clara agreed. "And you'd have done the same." A rider approached, young Timothy from town, his face grave. "Mr. McKenna, sheriff wants to see you. Says he's got Garrett at the jail." They found Garrett holding court in the sheriff's office, looking perfectly at ease. "Ah, McKenna, I was just explaining to Sheriff Watson about our business dispute. Unfortunate about your barn. These spring storms can cause such damage." "There was no storm," Clara said coldly. Garrett's smile was patronizing. "Hysteria is so common in women under stress. Perhaps your fiancé needs rest." "Perhaps," Clara said, stepping forward before Sam could intervene. "You need to understand something. Mr. Garrett, I've worked in army hospitals. I've held men's intestines in while they screamed. I've amputated limbs with nothing but whiskey for anesthetic. I've faced down gangrene, typhoid, and men so lost to pain they'd attack anyone who came near." She stood directly before him now, and Garrett's smirk faltered. "I'm not some delicate eastern flower to be frightened by a coward who burns barns in the night. You want a war? Then face us honestly and in daylight, like a man." "Clara," the sheriff warned, but she wasn't finished. "Furthermore," she continued, her voice carrying the authority of every dying soldier she'd comforted, "I've seen enough of death to recognize a killer's eyes. You may fool others with your fine clothes and manners, but I know what you are." The room was silent. Then Garrett laughed, though it sounded forced. "Such spirit." "McKenna, wherever did you find her?" "Get out of my town," Sheriff Watson said quietly. "There's no proof of arson, but there doesn't need to be. You're no longer welcome in my jurisdiction. You can't, I can, and I am. You and your men have 1 hour to clear out. Garrett stood, straightening his vest. This isn't over. McKenna, that land will be mine, one way or another. He tipped his hat mockingly to Clara. Ma'am, you're quite right. I don't make war on women, but accidents happen on the frontier. Such a dangerous place for someone so spirited. Sam lunged, but Clara caught his arm. He's not worth it. After Garrett left, Sheriff Watson turned to them. He'll be back. Men like that don't give up easy. I know, Sam said grimly, but we'll be ready. That night, Clara found Sam standing in the ruins of the barn, shoulders slumped with exhaustion and pain. We could leave, he said without turning. I could sell to someone else, anyone else, and we could start over somewhere new. Clara slipped her arms around him from behind, careful of his ribs. Is that what you want? I want you safe. I am safe. With you. She moved to face him. This is our home. Sam, Thomas loved the landscape here, didn't he? You said he painted it. Sam nodded, throat tight. Then we stay. We fight. We build something worth having, something worth protecting. She cupped his face in her hands. I've run once. I won't run again. He's dangerous, Clara. If something happened to you because of my past, then we face it together. That's what love is, isn't it? Not just the easy times, but standing together when the storms come. Sam kissed her then, pouring all his fear and love and gratitude into the connection. Around them, the acrid smell of smoke lingered, but beneath it was the sweet scent of spring grass and the promise of renewal. Together, he agreed against her lips. Always together. In the weeks that followed, they rebuilt. The barn rose again, stronger than before, built by neighbors who came to help without being asked. Clara organized the women to provide meals, turning the construction into a community event. She was delighted to find herself accepted, her past meaning nothing to these frontier folk who judged a person by their actions, not their history. Garrett made 2 more attempts, poisoning a well and trying to stampede the herd, but each time, Sam's increased security thwarted him. More importantly, the community closed ranks. Garrett found no one willing to work for him, no one willing to sell him supplies. You've done something I never could, Sam told Clara one evening as they watched the sunset from their new barn. You've made us part of this place, not just occupants. Clara leaned into his embrace. We're home, she said simply. This is worth fighting for. The final confrontation would come soon. She knew. Men like Garrett didn't accept defeat easily, but surrounded by their land, their people, their love. Clara felt no fear. Whatever came, they would meet it as they had everything else, together. The arrest of Harrison Garrett should have been the end of their troubles. But as Clara stood in the mercantile selecting fabric for her wedding dress, she overheard the whispers that would shatter her newfound peace. Did you hear? Sam McKenna's worth near about $2 million. Mrs., Henderson said to her companion. Inherited it all from that mining fortune back east. And that woman he's marrying, she was run out of Boston for loose morals. The other woman replied. Working in those colored hospitals, living here unmarried all these months. Now she's got her hooks in him good. Clara's hands stilled on the bolt of cream silk. The shopkeeper, Mr. Davis, cleared his throat loudly, but the damage was done. Word of Sam's wealth had spread like wildfire after Garrett's arrest, and with it came the judgment Clara had fled west to escape. She left without buying anything, walking quickly through town with her head high despite the stares and whispers. By the time she reached the ranch, 3 carriages sat in front of the house, expensive carriages bearing the crests of wealthy families. Inside, she found Sam surrounded by a delegation of Wyoming's elite society. Women in bustled gowns and men in fine suits filled the parlor, their Eastern accents jarring in the rustic space. Ah, you must be Miss Hartwell, a matronly woman said, her smile sharp as glass. I'm Mrs. Cornelius Ashford. We've come to welcome dear Samuel back to proper society. And to introduce our daughters, another woman added, pushing forward a young woman in pink ruffles. My Catherine would make such a suitable wife for a man of Mr. McKenna's standing. Clara felt the blood drain from her face as she understood. These vultures had descended the moment Sam's true worth became known, ready to claim him for their own kind. Clara, Sam said, moving to her side immediately. These people were just leaving. Nonsense. Mrs. Ashford declared. We've only just arrived, and we have so much to discuss about your return to Philadelphia. The house has been maintained, of course, and your board positions are waiting. I'm not returning to Philadelphia, Sam said firmly. My life is here now, with my fiancé. The woman's gaze swept over Clara dismissively. Yes, we heard about this arrangement. Really, Samuel. While I'm sure Miss Hartwell is quite companionable, surely you understand the importance of an appropriate match? Someone who understands society, another woman chimed in. Someone without a complicated past. Clara stood frozen, each word a carefully placed dagger. She'd faced this before in Boston. The polite cruelty. The social execution performed with smiles and innuendo. That's enough. Sam's voice cut like a blade. You will not speak of Miss Hartwell that way in my home. Your home? Mr. Ashford spoke for the first time, his tone patronizing. My boy, you're a McKenna. You have responsibilities to your class, to your family name. This exile of yours was understandable after poor Thomas, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop 20 degrees. Sam stepped forward, and even Clara, who knew his gentle heart, felt a chill at his expression. Get out, he said quietly. All of you, now. Samuel, be reasonable. Now! The society delegation fled in a rustle of silk and offended sensibilities. But Clara knew the damage was done. She stood in the sudden silence, arms wrapped around herself, feeling the weight of every whisper, every judgment. Clara, Sam began, reaching for her. She stepped back. They're right. What? They're right, she repeated, her voice hollow. You're Samuel McKenna III. You have a fortune, a name, a legacy. And I'm the disgraced nurse who lived in your house unmarried, who worked in colored hospitals, who brings nothing but scandal to your name. Stop it. Sam caught her shoulders. You know that's not true, isn't it? Clara pulled away, moving to the window. I've been fooling myself. Sam, playing house, pretending we could just be two people in love. But the world won't let us. Then damn the world. You can't damn it. It's your world. She turned to face him, tears streaming. Those people, that life, it's what you were born to, what Thomas died trying to escape. How can I ask you to give it all up for me? Sam crossed to her in 2 strides, pulling her into his arms despite her resistance. You're not asking, I'm choosing. I chose 3 years ago when I left, and I choose now. Clara, you are my world. She sobbed against his chest, but even his warmth couldn't chase away the cold reality. Over the next days, the situation worsened. More visitors arrived, each with eligible daughters and thinly veiled contempt for Clara. The townspeople, influenced by the wealthy outsiders, began to treat her differently. The warmth she'd earned was replaced by speculation and gossip. The final blow came in a letter from Charles, forwarded from Boston. My dear Clara, it read, I've heard of your circumstances in Wyoming. As a Christian man, I forgive your past hysteria and am willing to take you back. Surely you see now the impossibility of your current situation. A man of McKenna's standing will never truly marry you. Return to Boston before you disgrace yourself further. Clara read it by lamplight while Sam slept, each word confirming her fears. She looked at the man she loved, his face peaceful in sleep, and made her decision. Better to leave now, with dignity, than wait for him to realize his mistake. Better to spare him the choice between love and duty. She wrote her farewell in the pre-dawn darkness. My dearest Sam, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Please don't follow. You gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, the ability to love and trust again. But I cannot be the anchor that drags you down. Your world has found you, and you must make peace with it. Marry someone who brings honor to your name, not scandal. Someone who can stand in your mother's parlor without shame. I love you too much to watch the world slowly poison what we have. Better to end it now, while the love is still pure. Don't leave. You're the only one who belongs here. I'm the one who must go. Forever yours, Clara. She slipped out as the first light touched the mountains, saddling Buttercup with hands that shook. The ride to town passed in a blur of tears. At the stage depot, she used the last of her money for a ticket back to Cheyenne, where she could find work and disappear. Sam woke to Jose pounding on the door. "Patron! The señorita! She's gone!" The letter lay on Clara's pillow, her neat handwriting blurring as Sam read it. Rage and pain warred in his chest as he crushed the paper. "Saddle my horse," he ordered Jose. "Now!" He rode hard for town, but the stage had already left. The depot master, old Pete, looked sympathetic. She was crying something fierce, Pete said. Kept saying it was for the best. Sam stood on the platform, watching the dust settle from the departed stage, feeling his heart tear in two. Clara had run, not from danger or hardship, but from the poison of society's judgment, and he'd failed to protect her from the one enemy he couldn't fight with fists or guns. Shame. That night, he sat in the empty house, her letter smoothed out before him. The society matrons had won without firing a shot. They'd used Clara's own wounds against her, made her believe she wasn't worthy. "You're going after her." Jose said it wasn't a question. Sam looked up at his old friend. "She asked me not to." "Since when do you do what you're told?" Jose set a bottle of tequila on the table. "The señorita loves you. She left because she loves you. You think that kind of love comes twice?" Sam poured a drink with hands that shook. "What if she's right? What if I do bring her nothing but pain? Then you spend your life making up for it." Jose's weathered face was serious. "You think you honor your brother by hiding here? You think you honor her by letting her go?" The truth hit Sam like cold water. He'd hidden for 3 years, called it mourning, called it principle. But really, he'd been a coward, afraid to face the world that had killed his brother. And now his cowardice had cost him Clara. "I need to go to Cheyenne," he said, standing. "Si, patron. But first, maybe you need to go to Philadelphia." Sam frowned. "Philadelphia?" Jose smiled. "You want to marry the señorita? Then clear the way. Face those vultures. Tell them who you are now. Then find her and bring her home." Sam felt something shift in his chest, resolve replacing despair. Jose was right. It wasn't enough to hide from his past. He had to confront it, defeat it, prove that love was stronger than society's rules. "Pack my good suit," he told Jose. "I have a world to face, then I have a woman to win back." The war for Clara was far from over, but this time, Sam would fight it on his terms, with weapons society understood, power, money, and the absolute determination of a man who'd found his reason for living and refused to let her go. The cholera struck Cheyenne in late spring, sweeping through the poorer districts with merciless efficiency. Clara had found work at St. Mary's Hospital, a ramshackle facility that served those who couldn't afford better. When the epidemic began, she volunteered for the isolation ward without hesitation. "You don't have to do this, Doctor," Morrison had warned. "We've already lost 2 nurses." "It's what I'm trained for," Clara replied simply, tying back her hair and donning the protective apron. "What I'm meant for." For 2 weeks, she'd worked without rest, moving between patients in the converted warehouse that served as an overflow hospital. The familiar rhythm of crisis medicine was almost a comfort. Here, social standing meant nothing. Disease didn't care about scandal or reputation. Only skill mattered. And Clara had that in abundance. She was checking on a young boy, his fever finally breaking after 3 days of touch and go. When she heard the commotion outside, horses, many of them, and raised voices demanding entry. "You can't go in there, Doctor," Morrison's voice carried clearly. "It's quarantined." "Then you'd better quarantine me too." Clara's hand stilled on the boy's forehead. That voice, She'd know it anywhere. She turned to see Sam striding through the ward, still in his traveling clothes, his face haggard with exhaustion and fear. "Clara!" He stopped a few feet away, drinking in the sight of her. She looked exhausted, hair escaping from its practical bun, apron stained, shadows deep under her eyes. She'd never been more beautiful to him. "Sam, you can't be here," she said, her voice carefully controlled. "The infection. I know about the infection. I brought supplies, medicine from Denver, clean water barrels, food." He took a step closer. "I also brought doctors, 3 of them, waiting outside." Clara's resolve wavered. "How did you find me?" "Started in Philadelphia," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. "Sold everything, the house, the company shares. All of it. Kept only the Wyoming land. Then I tracked you to Cheyenne. When I heard about the epidemic, about a nurse matching your description working herself to death in the charity ward," his voice broke, "I knew where you'd be. Sam, I've been riding for 2 days." He continued. "Jose is outside with the supplies. I would have been here sooner, but I stopped to gather what help I could." He gestured to the ward full of sick. "This is where you belong, isn't it? Helping those everyone else forgets?" Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "You sold everything?" "Everything that didn't matter." He moved closer still. "Clara, I've spent 3 weeks facing down Philadelphia society. I stood in my father's boardroom and told them exactly what they could do with their expectations. I published a statement in the papers announcing my permanent relocation to Wyoming and my engagement to the finest woman I've ever known. They'll destroy you for it. Let them try. My life isn't there. It's here. With you." He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small, worn box. "This was my grandmother's, the only thing from that life worth keeping." Clara's hands shook as he opened it, revealing a simple gold ring with a single sapphire, nothing like the ostentatious jewelry favored by society, but perfect in its simplicity. "Sam, I'm in the middle of an epidemic ward. Then I'm exactly where I need to be." He dropped to one knee right there among the beds of sick and dying. "Clara Hartwell, you saved me from a life of emptiness and guilt. You showed me what real courage looks like. You made me want to be worthy of love again. Will you marry me?" "Yes," she whispered, then louder, laughing through her tears. "Yes, you impossible, wonderful fool." He slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into his arms, not caring about infection or propriety or the watching patients. Some of them even managed weak applause. "Now," Sam said, pulling back to look at her, "put me to work. I'm not much of a nurse, but I can carry water and follow orders." "You'll stay? Where else would I be?" "Doctor." Morrison appeared, looking harassed but relieved. "If you're staying, McKenna, you'll follow protocols. And thank God for those supplies. We're down to boiling bed sheets for bandages." Over the next week, they worked side by side. Sam proved surprisingly capable, his years of ranch work having given him stamina and a strong stomach. He held patients while Clara treated them, distributed the medicines he'd brought, and organized the volunteers who appeared once word spread that Samuel McKenna himself was working in the charity ward. "You've shamed half the city into helping," Clara told him one evening as they shared a quick meal of bread and soup in a corner of the ward. "Money has its uses," Sam admitted. "Making people uncomfortable is one of them." The epidemic peaked and began to wane. They lost some patients, too many, but saved more than they would have without the supplies and extra help. Clara worked with a renewed energy, no longer alone, but part of a team with the man she loved. One night, as they were preparing to leave after a 16-hour shift, they found Jose waiting with the wagon. "Padre Miguel is at the ranch," he announced. "Says he'll wait as long as needed." Clara looked at Sam, confused. "Padre Miguel? I asked him to come." Sam said, "Clara, I've waited long enough. Marry me, tonight, here, covered in the sweat and sorrow of honest work. No society gathering, no elaborate ceremony. Just us. Jose as witness. And God." Clara looked down at herself, filthy apron, exhausted beyond measure, hair probably looking like a bird's nest. Then she looked at Sam, equally disheveled, with a streak of something unidentifiable on his cheek and his expensive clothes ruined beyond repair. "Yes," she said. "Oh, yes." Ian. They were married at midnight in the ranch's parlor. Padre Miguel performing the ceremony in Spanish and English, while Jose and his wife Maria served as witnesses. Clara wore a clean but simple dress, and Sam had managed to find a decent shirt. Neither had ever been happier. "You may kiss your bride," Padre Miguel said with a gentle smile. Sam cupped Clara's face in his hands. "Don't leave," he whispered. "You're the only one." "Never again," she promised, and sealed it with a kiss. They returned to Cheyenne the next day to continue working until the epidemic was fully contained. The sight of the new Mrs. McKenna, wedding ring glinting as she tended patients, became a source of hope for many. Here was proof that love could flourish even in darkness, that choosing compassion over comfort was its own nobility. When the last patient was discharged and the emergency ward closed, the city wanted to throw them a celebration. Sam and Clara declined, choosing instead to return quietly to their ranch. "No regrets?" Sam asked as they rode home together, Clara having finally mastered riding astride. "Only one," Clara said. He looked at her in alarm. "What?" "That I wasted so much time being afraid." She reached over to take his hand. "We could have been married months ago if I hadn't let shame drive me away." "We're married now," Sam said. "That's what matters." They created the ridge overlooking their valley as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold. The ranch spread below them, smoke rising peacefully from the chimney. Horses grazing in the pastures they'd fought so hard to protect. "Welcome home, Mrs. McKenna," Sam said. Clara smiled, the title still new and wonderful. "Home," she agreed. "Forever." As they rode down toward their future, Clara thought about the strange journey that had brought them here. Two damaged souls fleeing their pasts, finding each other in the vast wilderness of Wyoming. Society might never fully accept them, but they'd found something better: purpose, partnership, and a love worth every sacrifice. The epidemic had shown her that she could still be the healer she'd always been, just in a different place. And Sam had proven that love meant more to him than legacy or reputation. Together, they'd build something new, not the life either had planned, but the life they were meant to live. "I love you," she said as they dismounted at the house. "And I love you," Sam replied. "My brave, stubborn, magnificent wife." They walked into their home hand in hand, ready for whatever challenges awaited. They'd face disease, scandal, and separation. Whatever came next, they'd meet it together. Two hearts finally. Truly. Home. A year had passed since their midnight wedding, and the ranch had transformed. What was once Sam's solitary refuge had become a beacon of hope for the surrounding community. The small clinic Clara had established in the renovated bunkhouse drew patients from 50 miles around, while Sam's fair wages and honest dealings had made their ranch a sought-after place to work. On this particular autumn morning, Clara stood in her clinic, carefully examining young Tommy Harrison, one of the two orphans they'd taken in after the epidemic. His sister, 8-year-old Sarah, waited anxiously nearby. "Just a cold," Clara announced, ruffling the 6-year-old's hair. "But you need to rest and drink the tea I'm giving you." "Yes, Mama Clara," Tommy said, the title still making her heart squeeze with joy. The children had come to them 3 months after the epidemic, their parents among its last victims. Sam had found them sleeping in an alley in town, sharing a single threadbare blanket. Without discussion, he'd brought them home. "They need us," he'd said simply. And Clara had opened her arms to 2 more souls who needed healing. Now Sarah helped in the clinic, showing an aptitude for nursing that reminded Clara of herself at that age, while Tommy followed Sam around the ranch like a determined shadow, learning the ways of cattle and horses. "Doc McKenna," Jose's grandson burst through the door. "Senor Sam says come quick. The fancy people are here again." Clara sighed, despite their distance from Philadelphia society. Occasional delegations still arrived, trying to lure Sam back to civilization. She'd learned to find them more amusing than threatening now. She found Sam on the porch, facing 3 well-dressed men she didn't recognize. But their type was familiar enough, lawyers or businessmen, she guessed, from their soft hands and calculating eyes. "Ah, Mrs. McKenna," the lead man said with false warmth. "How fortunate. I'm Mr. Whitman from the Union Pacific Railroad. We're here to make your husband a very wealthy man." "We're already wealthy," Clara said mildly, taking her place beside Sam. "We have everything we need." Whitman's smile tightened. "I mean, financially wealthy. Madam, the railroad will pass through this valley next year. We're prepared to offer $200,000 for your land." "No," Sam said simply. "You haven't heard our full offer. The answer is no," Sam repeated. "This land isn't for sale. Not to you, not to anyone. Be reasonable, McKenna. You can't ranch 20,000 acres forever. What happens when you're gone? You have no heir." "Actually," Clara interrupted, a smile playing at her lips, "that's no longer true." She placed a hand on her still flat stomach, meeting Sam's suddenly stunned gaze. They'd been trying for months, but she'd wanted to be sure before telling him. "Clara?" Sam's voice was barely a whisper. "About 3 months along, by my calculation," she said softly. "I was going to tell you tonight, but—" Sam swept her into his arms, spinning her around while whooping like a cowboy. All dignity forgotten. The railroad men stood forgotten as he set her down gently, hands immediately going to her stomach with wonder. "A baby," he breathed. "Our baby. Our baby," Clara confirmed, tears of joy streaming down her face. Whitman cleared his throat. "Congratulations, but that doesn't change. Get off my land." Sam's voice had gone deadly quiet. "This ranch will pass to my children and their children. The McKenna name will mean something different out here, something built on honest work and real values. The railroad can go around." After the men left, muttering about stubborn fools, Sam and Clara sat on the porch swing, his hand protectively over her stomach. "Are you happy?" Clara asked. "Happy doesn't begin to cover it." He kissed her temple. "Though Jose will be insufferable. He's been predicting this for months." As if summoned, Jose appeared with Maria, both beaming. "Is it true? A baby?" "It's true." Clara laughed. "Gracias a Dios!" Maria exclaimed. "I'll start knitting immediately." That evening, they gathered for dinner, their unusual family complete. Sarah and Tommy chattered excitedly about becoming big brother and sister, while Jose told embarrassing stories about Sam as a new rancher. The house rang with laughter and love. Later, Sam and Clara walked out to the small cemetery on the hill, where they'd placed a marker for Thomas. Sam had brought his brother's paintings from Philadelphia, and the best one, the mountain landscape, hung in their parlor. "I wish he could have met you," Sam said quietly. "He would have loved you." "He knows," Clara said, squeezing his hand. "Somehow, I think he knows." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sun set behind the mountains Thomas had loved to paint. The wind whispered through the sage grass, carrying the scent of coming snow and the promise of another winter. "No more running," Sam said. "No more hiding. We face whatever comes." "Together," Clara agreed. "Always together." As they walked back to the house, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here. A broken engagement, a fortune abandoned, an epidemic survived, and love found in the most unlikely place. Their story wasn't what either of them had planned, but it was theirs, written in courage and trust and the endless Wyoming sky. The clinic continued to grow. With Clara training local women as nurses, Sam expanded the ranch's operations, providing jobs and fair wages to any willing to work. The children thrived, bringing new life and laughter to what had once been a house of solitude. When railroad surveyors came through the next spring, they found the valley route blocked by McKenna land and were forced to build around, just as Sam had predicted. The ranch remained untouched, a preserve of the Old West even as progress thundered past. Clara gave birth to a daughter that summer, delivered by Dr. Morrison with Sam holding her hand through every contraction. They named her Grace Thomas McKenna, for the grace that had brought them together and the brother whose memory they honored. "She's perfect," Sam whispered, cradling his daughter while Clara rested against him, exhausted but radiant. "She'll be strong," Clara murmured, strong and kind and unafraid to stand for what's right. "Like her mother. Like both of us," Clara corrected. "We'll teach her that love is worth any sacrifice, that courage isn't the absence of fear but acting despite it." As night fell over their ranch, the McKenna family settled into peaceful rest. In the parlor, Thomas's painting caught the last light of day, mountains eternal against a painted sky. The house that had once echoed with loneliness now hummed with life, children's laughter, whispered lullabies, and the quiet conversations of a love that had survived every storm. Sam sat by the window, watching stars emerge one by one. Clara joined him, baby Grace sleeping in her arms, Tommy and Sarah already tucked in bed. "Do you ever regret it?" Clara asked. "The life you could have had?" Sam pulled her close, careful of the sleeping baby. "The only life I want is here, with you, with our family, with our home." Clara smiled, leaning into his warmth. "Don't leave. You're the only one," she whispered, echoing the words that had once been a plea but were now a promise. "Never," he whispered back. "You're my only one, too." Outside, a wolf howled in the distance, wild and free, like the love that had brought two broken souls together and forged them into something stronger. The West had tested them with blizzards and bullets, prejudice and pride. But they had endured, building a legacy not of money or status, but of love, compassion, and the courage to choose their own path. In the McKenna Ranch, hearts were at home, and in the vast Wyoming wilderness, under stars that had witnessed their whole story, Sam and Clara held their daughter and each other, knowing that they had found what so many sought but so few discovered, a love worth every sacrifice, a home worth every battle, and a future bright with promise. Their story would be told around campfires for generations. The millionaire who chose love over fortune, the nurse who chose courage over comfort, and the family they built in defiance of every expectation. It was a story of the real West, where character mattered more than cash and love conquered all. Thank you all for listening to this tale of love and redemption in the Old West. If you enjoyed Sam and Clara's journey, I'd love to know where you're listening from, whether it's by your own campfire or cozy at home. Please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of frontier romance and adventure, and share your thoughts about what touched your heart in this story. Until we meet again around the campfire, may your own trails lead to love and home.